On Watch From Home Theater, we talked about Netflix's latest action film, Extraction, with producer and star Chris Hemsworth, writer-producer Joe Russo, and director Sam Hargrave. And we got a chance to break down the movie's incredible 12-minute non-stop action sequence in real time.
You got here just in time. We're a few minutes out from the Oner.
I'm excited to see it. It was intense to shoot, and it's intense to watch.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just a couple of questions about it before we get into it. So, like, when it's actually happening, we can talk about it. But like, how did you first start to build this scene? And like, what was was it always wanting to be? Was it planned from the very beginning?
Well, Sam and Joe, you can speak to that within more detail. I was introduced to it probably a couple of months before we started shooting. Sam said he wanted to attempt this 12-minute oneer, and I thought, oh yeah, cool, that sounds like fun. And then didn't realize it was going to be as intense and physically challenging as it was. And we just had weeks and weeks of rehearsals, and then as we were shooting each day, we'd be rehearsing the next sequence, and the next day, what was coming up. So it was kind of, everything was sort of overlapping and intense, but adds to the energy of what you see.
Yeah, it wasn't planned that way. It was one of those things where it was. I mean, again, like when I read that scene, I couldn't stop like turning the page. I was, but it was one of those things. Just for me, it came down to like a way. How do I, tell this kind of action scene in a way that might be a little different than movie, that in genre that's come before, and they're not totally different. Warners have been done before, and some entire movies done that way. But I want, as from a creative standpoint, grab the audience and say, you're coming with us. We're going into that. We're getting out of DACA. We're taking this kid and we're going, so that the camera then becomes a character, and you get to experience this stuff in real time. You get to be surprised when Hemsworth's surprised. You only know what as he knows it, and you see the relationship between Tyler and Ovi grow during this process. And so that was the kind of creative impetus, and then the technical side, you could
There's always I find directors have sort of unique sort of wordings of kind of how they want to shoot things and make them different. And I remembered Sam saying, making the camera a character, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And then when I saw him strapped to the front of the car and diving off the building with the stunt guys, and falling down the stairs with us and so on, I thought, wow, it really he wasn't lying, he wasn't exaggerating, he's actually doing it.
And this is where it starts. That's where you start your clocks. Click, and this is where it starts, and then we're off to the. And part of this.
No, go.
No, go ahead.
It was originally scripted just as a protracted action sequence. What I love from 70s thrillers, like think about the car chase from French Connection. You're immersed in pure action for a protracted period of time, and it doesn't let you go. The bank heist from Heat. Any of the car chases from Ronin. So this was originally just scripted as a long action sequence. It was Sam's idea, and Sam fought for the notion of a oneer because he felt, like you said, it would be more immersive. And he committed months of his time to conceiving this and executing it. And it's exceedingly difficult. And, he put himself in harm's way in a way that very few directors would, to capture these shots on his own.
Yeah, I love all these videos. You just strap to the hood of the car, pointing the camera and
Yeah,
stuff.
I'll point it out when it happens. And what's crazy about this? It looks like, and this like going through this gate, this shot coming up. Chris Hemsworth and Rudy in the seat were smashing through. This isn't on a green screen. They're in the vehicle, in the dust, the street, as these cars they're narrowly tuk-tuks and police cars. It's all them in the car, like these. Yep. It's not. So that's part of the thing that's, to me, was also fun, is the realism that I wanted was part of another part of this. So here's one where I'm on the back of a camera vehicle. Same here. This is actually one of my favorite little bits because the car kung fu, just the intricate choreography. Wow. And I was, my lens was three feet away from some of that. Here, this shot is where I'm strapped to the hood of the car because the camera vehicle that we were using before was not able to drift these corners and get this kind of stay this close. It didn't have enough power, and it was the wheelbase, and it allowed me to get this shot where when the car stopped, they just released me. I could slide right off the hood and then kind of dive into the back of the car. So, depending on the necessity of the shot, we use different tools, and sometimes I had to strap myself to the hood of a car.
So, Chris, we were talking about driving through gates and just being right there. Like, can you talk about the difference between that? Like, is it more fun, more weirdly satisfying to do stuff like that instead of like the bigger green screen CG stuff?
Oh yeah, you're completely immersed in the moment, and you're not only as the character, but you as the performer. You're not having to act afraid, nervous, elevated heart rate, out of breath, because you truly are. And it was intense. At the end of every take was like, whew, okay, we all survived. I mean, as we're driving through the streets there's stunt performers, diving out of the way as we get within a foot or two of them, and that was the most nerve-wracking stuff. Just the sort of the timing, that everyone had to be in exactly the right place at the right moment. But it's certainly way more enjoyable. The hardest stuff I find is green screen, sound stage, just numbing lights, kind of no energy, no environment to react off and to sort of interact with.
You mean your decade at Marvel?
I mean my entire career outside this movie. Yeah. I was going to say that myself. Every time I work with Joe Russo, it's just been really boring, and he promised me something.
Zero energy, numbing lights.
What it takes then is like, you better have a good script, you better have a good director to help you kind of get there. You better have good actors. You get there and you make Avengers, the little small film that you put together, Joe. But
good save.
Yeah, good.
So don't worry, we'll just clip out the first part of that.
Talk about how long you trained for this stuff. This fight coming up here. Like, how long would it take you guys to?
I mean, we didn't have as much time as we would have liked in rehearsal, but the moment I got there, and then it's probably 3 or 4 weeks of rehearsal, Sam, prior to that particular moment. And it was, we would shoot all day long, which felt like a training session in itself. It was just you're sweating, running, fighting, jumping. In between setups, we'd be rehearsing scenes. We'd get home then and we'd have maybe 30, 40 minutes of gym work, and then we'd go and do more rehearsal. And it was the most rehearsal I've ever had. But I've got to say, I felt my body, in better condition than I've ever been in, and less banged up during this shoot than I was even on something where I did far less, training or far less kind of stunts. And I think it's just because you're in the moment, and it's 3 months of nonstop, but you're running on adrenaline and you don't have time to think about what hurts and what's breaking down. And I don't know, I certainly prefer to work that way after this experience, just sort of hit the ground running and don't stop.
Yeah, we're getting a handful of similar questions actually from some people that are watching about your involvement in this movie from the beginning. Ivan Okafor, Walid Wajid, sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names, but questions about what attracted you to this movie in the first place. And Walid Wajid has an interesting one about action heroes. What action heroes that are kind of throwbacks, if any, did you take inspiration from for this character?
Yeah. It was the unique blend of, this incredible action film and what Sam had, wanted to do with it and how he wanted to shoot it with the emotional component and this character. Joe had written just such an incredible script that, felt like an art house action film, which was a pretty unique combination. I didn't really want to just do another action film. It was pretty heavy on my history of what I'd done, and yet this felt very, very different. There was a character that had a heartbreaking journey and a backstory, and something that that emotional component was throughout the whole film. and everyone sort of each character was, had their morals kind of questioned and compromised, and had to make decisions that ultimately really transformed where they were headed in life. And a lot of the time it's just action for the sake of action, whereas this continually informed the narrative and where the characters were emotionally. As far as films that I drew from, I think more on a sort of unconscious level. I mean, I grew up, Rambo, films like that I loved, and a lot of the action films of sort of the 80s and 90s. But there wasn't anything I specifically kind of went and watched and went, oh, this is what I want to do. It was, I guess you could pull a million different films that, without me realizing, I'd probably stolen ideas from. But
we're getting back into the sequence here. Here comes this knife fight with Saju.
Yeah.
And just a second ago, Sam, I assume that was you that jumped off the roof holding a camera there to follow them down there.
I did. Yep. If those guys were going off, I was going to follow them.
I was half joking about
part
that
of it
too,
was
that's great.
You'd get yourself in these situations. You're like, oh, let's just shoot on this balcony. But like, how are you going to get down? We're like, well, obviously we got to jump. Like they got to fall, and I got to follow them. Otherwise, it won't feel real. It won't feel. So tried to keep it like we talked about before. As a character. Now this was kind of inspired by our daily interaction with the environment when we'd be scouting or just going, walking to and from our hotels, like tuk-tuks, motorbikes, just passing right by. There's this crazy flow. This I never saw a single traffic accident while I was there, but the flow of traffic is just amazing. And so we tried to say, what if we threw, a knife fight in the middle of all that? How would that look? And so, that's.
Yeah, I do love that the life of the street is just kind of still happening around them right up until the car gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, you just we were so lucky with sort of where we shot, and even the sequence just a few minutes ago where we're running up the stairs, and then you see outside, you see the buildings. There's hundreds of people looking over the buildings and so on. You're watching us shoot. Now, in real life, they would have also been looking over, going, there was a car crash and gunshots and what's going on. Yet they were just local people just there. And so we kind of, a lot of what you see is the busyness and reality of what was going on, beyond what we could control. And again, you couldn't choreograph that kind of crowd, real crowd reaction to that scale, I think. And we got lucky.
I did also see it.
Payback in the form of a van. No, go ahead. That was it.
No, it's a good. You're absolutely right. We need to watch that. It's such a good out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's payback, like Joe said, like with the rake, there's a bit of, as serious, there is a bit of tongue in cheek, like awareness. So it's like, tit for tat. Like if you hit me with a car, I'm gonna hit you with a, like there's a bit of that back and forth going on, which we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this moment.
Yeah, we're still going here.
Yeah, because we're still in the Oner. But it's also, that's not face replacement. That's Chris Hemsworth and Rudy. Like they're in the car. They're doing this stuff, which is part I love about this sequence is how in the action the performers are. Like we weren't faking it. They're all these environments. Like this next shot, Rudy's hanging his head outside of a speeding van. Like that's the guy. It's not on the blue screen. Yeah. He's hanging his head out of a car. That's part of what really excited me about that sequence, and I think makes it unique, is a throwback to those movies that you were just doing it, and then you got out you go.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
So then,
yeah.
I'll just Joe or Sam, like to shoot like this, right? I mean, when it works, it's like you get that kind of sequence, right? Is the reason a big move to the green screen for a lot of things traditionally in a sequence like that would have been just logistically because of how complicated it is to do, or is it I don't know, cheaper to shoot on a green screen. It sort of feels like
to give Sam some props here. I mean, that is incredibly complicated, and it's very complicated to map that out and to map that out over geography that extends for 12 minutes at a time. It takes months, and it takes a level of experience and a know-how that very few people actually have. And Sam is one of those people, and I don't know that I could have conceived of that shot. I don't think I could have. Only Sam could have. So, as I said, it was scripted as a more traditional sequence. It was Sam's idea to conceive it as the Oner, and he put the time, the thought, and the energy into it, and worked with his team diligently for months to craft that. It's very complicated to pull off.
To hear more from Chris, Joe, and Sam about the movie, check out the entire episode of Watch From Home Theater and all the secrets writers Gary Whitta and Chris Weiss revealed about Rogue One. And as always, subscribe to IGN and Cinefix wherever you like to watch.